The US draft resolution comes as a third convoy of trucks entered the Rafah crossing into Gaza from Egypt, what the UN describes as a small glimmer of hope, but that they need more, much more.
What went in today cannot cover the needs at all. It's a very tiny proportion of what is needed. So we need to have, instead of 20 trucks per day, at least 100, 200 trucks going in per day. That's just, it of course depends what's on the trucks, but approximately speaking, with food, water, medicine, and fuel. That is a necessary condition for us to be able to respond to the humanitarian life-saving requirements and needs right now.
The draft resolution introduced at the weekend seeks to succeed where earlier Russian and Brazilian drafts have failed, including due to a US veto. This latest text unequivocally condemns the heinous terrorist attacks by Hamas and other groups, demands the immediate and unconditional release of hostages, calls for all measures necessary to allow unhindered humanitarian access in line with international humanitarian law, and for efforts towards possible humanitarian pauses and corridors, while calling on all member states to intensify steps to prevent the violence from expanding regionally and to take steps to prevent the exports of arms to militias and terrorist groups in Gaza.
President Biden is in the region.
This was the US ambassador after casting Washington's veto last week.
We are on the ground doing the hard work of diplomacy. And while we recognize Brazil's desire to move this text forward, we believe we need to let that diplomacy play out, especially when Secretary General Guterres, President Biden, Secretary Blinken, and regional actors are engaged in intensive dialogue on the very issues we are deliberating on today. Yes, resolutions are important, and yes, this Council must speak out, but the actions we take must be informed by the facts on the ground and support direct diplomacy efforts that can save lives. The Council needs to get this right.
As the UN continues to call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire rather than piecemeal efforts that don't fully meet the needs on the ground.
It is going to be challenging. We need to deliver. We have the humanitarian imperative, which is driving us. At the same time, we do call for a cessation of hostilities immediately, of course. That is the only way that we can actually deliver safely. But at the same time, we also call on the parties to the conflicts to avoid any targeting of health and education facilities, which allows us to deliver the aid safely to the health facilities and everywhere that they are needed. And we also remind the parties that health staff need to be protected in order to carry out their mandate.
A readout of a call Sunday between President Joe Biden and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the two affirmed that there would now be a continued flow of critical assistance into Gaza, with reports that the United States has urged Israel to delay a ground invasion of Gaza to buy time for further hostage negotiations. As the threat of this conflict expanding regionally grows, with Washington deploying a significant amount of naval power to the region.
As President Biden said earlier, and as you've heard me say, if any group or any country is looking to widen this conflict and take advantage of this very unfortunate situation that we see, our advice is don't. We maintain the right to defend ourselves, and we won't hesitate to take the appropriate action.
All this while Israel's air offensive of Gaza continues. So too does rocket fire from Gaza, with reports that the death toll in the enclave has now exceeded 5,000, as officials there claim almost half are children. Israel's military says it hit 320 targets in Gaza over the past 24 hours, including tunnels used by Hamas, militant operational command centers, and other military installations. Large swaths of the territory have, as a result, been reduced to rubble, while more than 1 million people, almost 50% of the entire population, have been displaced. Sherwin Riceby's SABC News, New York.